The show is brought to you by our generous patrons at patreon.com/FalloutLorecast.
Robots Radio presents the Fallout Lorecast.
Welcome to the Fallout Lorecast, a place for the Fallout community to come together to explore the boundaries of our knowledge about the world of Fallout. Wastelanders, Vault Dwellers, welcome back. This is the Fallout Lorecast. This is your host Tom, or Robots, and this is this is an episode that is actually going to be a little bit early or a little bit late, depending on when you're tuning in. The episode I planned to get out last week was an interview, and I'm not going to spill the beans on it yet, but we were waiting. Ken from Chat at Fallout 76 podcast and I got to do an interview with some of the devs over on the Fallout 76 team. And we're still waiting to get official approval from the Bethesda team to get that episode officially out. So I was hoping to get that out last week. It never quite happened. But I'm recording right now a new episode for you guys with two very cool guests. These two guys have shows on the Robots Rocket Club. And these shows are some of the coolest shows that I know of in the Fallout universe. And first of all, I'm going to introduce one of the guys that has been on the Rocket Club for a while now. You've probably heard his show, the MODUS Files. Lawrence, how are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, this is our first time getting you on the show. It's been a while. I guess I probably should have done this earlier, but I've been busy with lots of stuff. I know you've been a busy guy, cranking out, 23 episodes this year?
A lot. I actually lost track. I think the last time I checked, it might have actually been 29.
29.
It was even more than I expected. So it's been busy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't know how you keep up and get a show with all the voice actors, all the scripts, all the editing. That's so much work. But you've been killing it. You've been getting lots of stuff out there. Congratulations on that. Wrapping up a year of a really awesome show. And we'll get into a little bit more of that later, but we've got a really cool premise for this episode. And then I also have one of our newer shows on the network, a brand new show, just released its third episode, Once Upon a Wasteland, a Fallout romance story. And these are rare in the universe of Fallout. Very high quality audio, really cool story, really cool voice acting. This is Brad, the brilliant mind behind the series. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's definitely great to be here, and to be here with Lawrence is certainly an honor. Lawrence and I have collaborated quite a bit, and he's been absolutely invaluable to whatever success the show's achieved. So it's great to be on here with him and with you.
Yeah. So we have a quick question here in chat. Villain Behind the Glasses asks, where does one go to listen to these shows? All of these shows are available just like my shows on any podcatcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere that you can listen to my podcasts. Your guys' shows are also available. So, anywhere that you would normally listen to these shows. So my shows, go listen to their shows. So great question, Villain. But you guys are, I think, the perfect guests for our topic for today, because we're continuing our What If series with a really cool topic. Both of your shows take place in the setting created by Fallout 76, West Virginia, the post falling of the bombs, 25 years after the bombs dropped. That's kind of the setting that we get right in the Fallout 76 part of the Fallout universe. And in the Fallout universe that we're given in the Fallout 76 story, we come into a world that's been not only irradiated with super mutants and the typical Fallout stuff, but the situation that they are really dealing with when we open up that vault door and come out of that vault is very specific, because there is the Scorched plague. That's the main issue. And we come to learn that the people who were originally out in West Virginia were trying to solve this plague, and they almost did. And then they didn't. And so the premise for this episode is, what if the Scorched plague never happened? And I know that we've been chatting a little bit about this when I invited you guys onto the show. And I know that you've done some thinking, and you're both writers. You're both very creative, and I know that your minds have probably gone in a million different directions about like, okay, well, how does this domino into this thing and this other thing and this other thing? And I know both of you guys are big lore buffs on everything that happened in the events of Fallout 76 and how the Scorched Plague affected different things, how the different factions went about doing this. But let's take this one step at a time, because I don't want to talk about necessarily why it didn't happen. I want to talk about like, let's just go from the premise of it just didn't happen. Where would the story go, and how would that affect our playing of the game and the factions that are there when we open the vault door? What would we see when we come out? How would the world be different? Who would like to start? What do you think would be one of the first things that would be distinctly different about the world of Fallout 76?
So I think the most obvious one is we'd actually see people. You know, that's when we go out of the vault, we see nobody. There's corpses, there's, then we run into the Scorched. So the first thing that we're going to see is people. And the first people that we're actually going to meet are going to be the responders, because they are the ones that actually occupy the forest region. They're very well organized. Now, we have to accept that certain events will still have occurred before the vault door opens. Mm-hmm. So Charleston Dam will have been blown up by the raiders.
Right.
That's going to happen. So we would expect that the responders are going to be at the airport, but Flatwoods should be a thriving community.
Right. Okay. So let's pause for a moment for those people who are a little bit fuzzy about the lore, or for people who haven't necessarily really dug into Fallout 76. The responders were the group of survivors who were left in the wasteland and came together to try to help the people who were stuck out in the world. And they came to blows with some other factions who were in the world, mainly raider groups. And we won't get into all the nitty gritty details, but there were definitely some bad blood between some individuals, and a dam was exploded and took out some innocents and some of the responders. And you actually see the remnants of this in Fallout 76. There's a large swath of land that used to be the reservoir and the dam that is now empty. It's all been washed away. So we would still see the results of that, is what you're saying. But we would still see that the responders would still exist. You don't think that the raiders or the responders would necessarily have gotten the one up on each other?
So I think it depends on how deep you really want to get into it, because I would imagine that the responders were probably too well organized to be wiped out. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think they would be the predominant faction in the region. If we think about kind of the story of Fallout 76, you have the responders, you have the raiders. We also have the Brotherhood of Steel. This was a faction that existed. It was started by a group called Taggarty's Thunder. They were a U.S. Army unit that was in the region for war games. They became the Brotherhood of Steel in Appalachia. You had the Enclave, though I think in the story that we are following here, or what we're telling it, all of that still would have happened. Or excuse me, the Enclave in the White Spring Bunker, which was underneath the resort, there was again, we can go super deep into that. Suffice it to say, I would still wipe the slate clean. That faction itself wouldn't exist in any tangible way, though I have a lot of ideas of how they would play a part in the world. And then way off in kind of this region of Fallout 76, they call the Mire, which is, think of it as like the backwoods of Appalachia. You have the Free States, and these are basically anarchists. So that just kind of gives, I think, our listeners a little bit kind of the lay of the land of the different factions that are around, all of whom would exist in some form or fashion, and we would be able to interact with. So for those who have experienced Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, or even some of the other Fallouts, you would find a multi-faction, really region that you would start interacting with as a player. So you would find and hopefully have the ability to ally with one or more of them. And there would be a story that we would follow, probably built around with the people that actually wanted to rebuild Appalachia versus the people that just wanted power. So you would have, pretty much the raiders versus everyone else. But I think there's a lot of dynamics between the other factions that would come into play. So I'm going to stop monopolizing the time here.
No, that's a great foundation set. The Brotherhood, Taggarty's Brotherhood, in the region was wiped out in a last-ditch effort to get rid of the Scorched. They were overrun by the Scorched, and that's why they're no longer there. In fact, many of these groups were trying to do what they could in order to fight off the Scorched plague, and they either were destroyed or had to leave because they couldn't hold them off. So in the situation, you're saying that each of these groups were established enough by the time the vault was open, and many of these groups were actually, sadly enough, came to their end just moments before the vault doors opened, seemingly. So you're saying that we'd come out into a wasteland that would be very similar to something like Fallout 4. You'd come across factions that were active, and there'd be locations like Diamond City, or like the Brotherhood having some sort of base. It wouldn't be the Predwin flying around in the air, but it would be, a base, and there'd be actual, Brotherhood soldiers walking around doing their thing. And these factions would be more or less competing with or cooperating in some sort of rough structure. But none of them you think would necessarily get the leg up on each other.
No, I mean, I think that it's, if you look at the lore of Fallout in general, you never really have one faction that's able to establish like preeminent control, and that's because there's just an undercurrent of competition that really exists amongst pretty much everyone. I mean, I think the Minutemen in Fallout 4 were probably one of the only ones that wasn't out for really their own power.
Right.
I think the Responders would probably correspond more to that picture of the Minutemen. But, I think you would find an Appalachia that would be very dynamic, and you would actually have shifting alliances. So I think that you might have the Free States cooperating with the Responders in some respect. Taggarty's Thunder, this Brotherhood of Steel was actually very militaristic. They didn't cooperate well with civilians. They took what they wanted. Now, of course, if you remove the Scorched, are they as militaristic? I think you might actually be able to make the argument that the super mutants might become the bigger threat and still force the Brotherhood of Steel or Taggarty to take that hardlined approach, which would then alienate the other civilian factions. So, I mean, it would definitely not lend itself to, I think, cooperation. I think in a way, it almost creates more conflict and actually conflict between people.
Yeah, well, Taggarty's group came directly from the U.S. military. They did come from that. Now, Brad, I want to move to you. Do you think do you have the same concept here? Do you think that this tracks with what you think would happen?
Yeah, I think the key is something Lawrence mentioned right at the beginning, which is the big difference is the sheer number of people. Right. So instead of just having a couple of raider factions that are kind of splintered off here and there, you don't have the Brotherhood, you don't have the Responders. You have these factions that are active, that are vying for power or are trying to help or whatever, just like you do in Fallout 4. And the thing that I really think is, it's like, if the Scorched Plague didn't happen, Fallout 76 would not be a multiplayer game. It would be another single player game because it would play out not exactly like Fallout 4, but very similarly to Fallout 4. I think that, it was probably a conscious decision by Bethesda to have that sort of empty open world for players to interact with each other. In the absence of that, with a more dynamic, a more populated Appalachia, well, then that part of it is marginalized a little bit, and you would, I think, want to have it play out a little bit more like Fallout 4.
Absolutely.
The big thing about the Brotherhood of Steel, though, I think that Taggarty does not play well with civilians in general, and I don't think that would change in the absence of the Scorched. And even if Taggarty's Thunder completely wiped out the super mutants, I think that they would still maintain that standoffish, militaristic kind of stance. And I don't think that they would become a sort of a trusted and cooperative faction. And I'm going to go Alanis here. I'm going to say, ironically, I think that the Lost Hills expedition that came out in the way the game actually played out is in a much better position, whether Knight Shin leads it or whether Paladin Romani leads it, to become a more powerful faction by not directly seeking power, by using their discipline, using their military know-how, using their skills at diplomacy, all of those things that they have, being led by the God Empress Odessa Valdez to help with community outreach.
She's a character in your story, and so anybody who doesn't listen to your story yet doesn't know. But she's one of your main characters. Yes, but in all seriousness, I think that, and especially if Romani is the one who ends up leading that faction, I think that their desire to go out there and really cooperate with the community. I mean, in a way, they kind of take up the mantle of the responders in a way. They're not quite as altruistic as the responders. They still have that imperative to gather and hoard technology. But I think that under Romani's leadership, and I think, Shin's a little bit more of a softie than people give him credit for. I think he would also go along in the same way and have them as that kind of a faction, that kind of Minutemen faction, that kind of responder sort of a faction. But I think one thing that I was thinking about when we talk about this, the lack of a Scorched plague, is because of the fact that Appalachia was largely, unlike the other areas that we've seen in other Fallout games, kind of not free from the effects of the war, but didn't have, dozens of nuclear bombs dropped on, carpet bombing the entire region. I think that it would become a destination, far from being just a place where people are. People would flock there from the Capital Wasteland, from the pit, from all these other places that maybe we haven't even explored. You'd have that. I think you'd have a baby boom because people are feeling good about themselves. And I think that they would be optimistic because of the fact that they're not seeing the kind of devastation that other people are seeing in other areas. So, in a way, it's really in a position to become sort of a shining star of what used to be the United States. Whether that plays out, because people are people, and you still have the Raiders, and you have a more powerful Cutthroats faction. You have other groups that are going to come up that didn't come up because everybody left. Right. You're still going to have those struggles for power, as we've seen in the other Fallout games. So it's not going to be, the lack of the Scorched is not a panacea, but it is going to lead to a more robust, almost a Renaissance type of environment, separate and distinct from what we've seen in other games. Now, what happens after that, like what happens in 200 years when Fallout 4 takes place, right? Nobody talks about Appalachia. Why is that? Right. Right. Well, yeah. And the Scorched Plague or not Scorched Plague, that could play a huge difference in what happens in 200 years. Yeah.
And I mean, I people say that, oh, well, Appalachia, something terrible must have happened. And maybe it did, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. It just could be one of those places. It ended up turning into a place so normal, for lack of a better word, that it's not worth talking about. You have the Capital Wasteland, and that's all wild. You have the pit, and you have New California, and all these other places that have, there's stuff going on there. Whereas then you got Appalachia, which is just kind of this place,
right? Right. Maybe.
So, yeah. But it also could have gone horribly wrong, and it's just a big crater now.
It could have. I mean, there's also. I've got some other ideas, but I'll save that for later. So here's a thought, and I'm going to throw some other ideas out at you guys. I know you've got some other ideas as well, but for the first half of this, because we'll take a break in the middle to thank our patrons and stuff. But I've got a few other ideas I want to just throw at you. With more humans out in the wasteland, and with the major non-human threat no longer being the Scorched, and Lawrence kind of touched on this, super mutants still being a major threat, especially with a major location in the area that was churning out super mutants. We all know that super mutants need humans to turn into more super mutants. And with more humans being there, do you think that there would be more super mutants? There'd be more bodies to create more super mutants with. There are vats of FEV in the area. Would they become the predominant threat without Scorched there and with more humans around?
I think they'd have to. I think that I think they're very well established in the lore. You see what they do in the Capital Wasteland. I think it makes sense. Also, just from a a perspective of player interaction, they're actually kind of in the middle of Appalachia. It's, if you look at the map, West Tech is pretty much right in the middle.
Yeah.
And then you have Huntersville right there. And then you also have the Grafton Dam, you have the Colonel Steakhouse, you have these areas in which super mutants have infested. And I think that if you're going to make a threat that is, I wouldn't say existential, that's, I think, the way that I would go anyway, because I think if you look at now, of course, on the flip side of that, super mutants plus cryptids, if you start thinking about some of the cryptids that have popped up, the question that I always ask is, and this is actually one of the questions that started my podcast was, where did the cryptids come from? Now, most of them came from West Tech. They were FEV experiments, the Snallygaster FEV experiment, the Grafton Monster FEV experiment.
Right.
But then you have the Mothman. Then you have the Flatwoods Monster.
Yeah. You
have Wendigos, and these are quote unquote cryptids that came from somewhere. Now, I suspect, and I'm going to throw this out there, is that there was a lot more going on at Arctos Pharma than we have actually been let in. I mean, we see the basement. We know that there were a lot of experiments that were going on there. And actually, the Sheep Squatch. Supposedly, the Sheep Squatch came from Arctos Pharma. What else were they doing? I think that that's actually the dark horse in this whole conversation, which is West Tech was bad. It's possible that Arctos Pharma was worse. And then eliminate the Scorched Plague. Suddenly, those experiments don't end when the bombs drop, because what are those researchers going to do?
Yeah.
Well, so I think that's actually a legitimate question you can throw out there to say, hey, maybe it's not just super mutants. It's actually I don't know if you want to call it a cryptid threat. I mean, maybe that's what it is. It's actually cryptids plus super mutants because they're naturally related to each other. Mm-hmm.
It's a mutant threat is what it is.
Mutant threat.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we've learned throughout Fallout, not just 76, but all the Fallout games, is whatever we see on the surface that we know is going on that's bad, there's probably things that are 10 layers deeper than that are alluded to or hinted at or implied that are much, much worse. And I think that what Lawrence is saying really plays into that. It's headcanon, but I always feel like, Vault 76 is supposed to be the good vault, right? Where it's one of the only vaults that actually did what its mission was without any kind of ulterior motives. I don't think Vault Tech really did that. I think that there was some stuff going in. Sure. I mean, they really did work toward their stated goal earnestly, but I also think that there was a lot more going on in Vault 76, and it would follow that there's also a lot more going on at Arctos. There's maybe even additional things going on at West Tech that we didn't find out about yet, and all those other kinds of things. So yeah, I think that, I guess part of what I wonder when we have a conversation like this is, do you look at it as a historian? Like, do you look at it and say, okay, if this doesn't happen, then what plays out? Or do you look at it as a storyteller, as if you're saying, I am developing Fallout 76 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, however long ago it was they started developing it. This is the way that I could tell my story, with the Scorched Plague or without the Scorched Plague. How do I tell that story if there is no Scorched Plague? So I think that it's a fundamental difference in how you want to look at it. And I think I guess I kind of play both sides of the coin when I was thinking about it, but I tended to look at it a little bit more from a historian's perspective of, okay, this Nexus event didn't happen. Like, Henry VIII didn't behead his first wife.
Sure.
A Nexus event. What happens after that? Not, I'm writing a novel about what happens if Henry VIII doesn't chop his first wife's head off.
Right.
So, so there's a couple of different ways to look at it. And I think that those different ways fundamentally alter the way that things would play out. Right.
I got you. Yeah. Interesting, because it tracks in different ways in your mind when you play it different ways. One other thing before we go to the mid break, the other thing that we get, the other potential threat group that's unique to Fallout 76 are the mole miners. And the whenever there are dangerous threats in an environment, there's always an equilibrium that happens. And we see it from the perspective of the humans who have to live there. And as a human in the wasteland, we have to deal with mutant animals and Scorched and super mutants, and of course feral ghouls. I mean, but that's part of the mutant threat, right? I'll lump them into the super mutants and stuff. But then there's mole miners, and they're new to this. But we don't ever look at it from the perspective of like, how do these things all get along with each other? And just like animals in the wild, there's a balance. I'm sure the mole miners and the Scorched don't necessarily get along either, or the super mutants and the mole miners, or the super mutants and the Scorched, or, like they're all competing for resources. They're all competing for land. So what happens with the mole miners if there aren't Scorched? Do the mole miners stay in their hidey holes? Are they happy to live underneath the ground? Do less Scorched civilians mean that there's more humans in those places where the mole miners would have been? And so the humans are now ferreting out the mole miners from those locations because they want the resources in those locations. Like, do you have any thoughts about how this would affect that part?
So I'm really glad you brought up the mole miners, because I'm putting a lot of research into them, because there's a lot of cut content that didn't actually make it into Fallout 76 yet about the mole miners. So if we think about who the mole miners are, these were people who were downtrodden. They were strike buster robots that were literally killing them before the bombs.
Yeah.
So they are about as anti-business, anti-people as you can get. And then of course now they're mutated and they're stuck in these things. I actually think that they could be a very significant threat in their area. I think the ash heap would pretty much become their territory. And I could definitely see them, and they do. So I think they would really view that almost as like their home, and they would really be aggressive towards anybody or anything that was trying to move into their home. Because now all of a sudden, of course, now they're mutants, but they have gotten the backs of business off of them. They're not working for the Garehands anymore. They're not working for the Hornwrights. I think that there's a lot of potential there, and
there's some intelligence going on underneath that. They're still, they're not completely wild.
Well, if you read if you actually look at the translated dialogue lines, it is creepy what they talk about.
Yeah. We talked with the devs about this, and that stuff, we were told that stuff isn't necessarily supposed to be taken as canon, that they just had to write lines to use, that the actual translation isn't supposed to be canon. But it does appear that they seem to be intentionally doing things, whether those lines are translated verbatim or not. They are saying things. They do have a language. They seem to be coordinating with each other. They are living and mining and working together. They're not feral ghouls. They seem to be intelligent, at least on some level still.
So but one thing about the mole miners though, and if I have my lore wrong here, correct me, but we talked about super mutants and how without the Scorched as a threat, the super mutants would have all these people to make into new super mutants. That could be something that increases their number and makes them more of an invasive species than they are now. Right. I don't think, and again, correct me if I have this wrong, there aren't more mole miners being made.
As far as we know, I don't think so. Because I think there's a limited number.
Still, right. There aren't still miners trapped in there who aren't mole miners now. They're just, so whatever numbers we have are, that's the number of mole miners that we will have moving forward. So if it becomes a war of attrition, which I think it would be, look at the Civil War, for example, or World War I. You have these wars of attrition, and a lot of the balance of power depended on your reinforcements, the reinforcements you had available. If the mole miners don't have any reinforcements, well, eventually these humans are going to kill them all, or the super mutants are going to kill them all. And maybe they turn into the dwarves from Lord of the Rings, and just hole up inside the mines and make that their stand. And like the humans get to the point where they say, okay, you know what? it is not worth the number of lives we will lose to take this area away from them. They're not coming out. We're not going in. They can hang out there forever for all we care. We will live above the ground. Maybe
they can have their trash heap. We don't need it anyway.
You can have your stupid mines.
Yeah.
West Wales.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. All right. Well, I want you guys thinking about some of the other things that we haven't discussed yet, because I know you have some more thoughts on this. And I also want some of your craziest takes. I want just some of your like furthest down the line, like if all the dominoes topple, where do you think where do you think this could really, really go? Like, what's your craziest take? Like if things really went off the rails, where do you think it'll go? And we'll be right back because we got to thank our patrons. So we'll be right back. It's time for that spring reset. I'm taking a look at everything in my closet and figuring out that, oh no, this absolutely needs to go. And it's about time I replace things so that my clothes aren't older than my 15-year-old. Now you might think that they lasted that long because they were well made, but no, they're in terrible condition. Unlike the new jeans I just got from Quince. Jeans have always been my personal go-to because you can kind of wear them for lots of different things, but maybe they're not your thing. Maybe you're looking for, 100% European linen with insanely soft flow knit activewear fabric. It's definitely getting warmer, and their flow knit activewear is moisture wicking, anti-odor, and soft enough that you'll actually want to wear it every day. So pick out what you want. You can't go wrong because they have prices 50 to 60% less than similar brands. And like I said before, they are high quality. I continue to wear their clothes all the time, and I know that these new jeans are going to last me a lot better than the other things in my wardrobe. And on top of it, they look great. They're so comfortable. And I spent just as much on the jeans that I am now cleaning out of my wardrobe. So if you're looking for something better, just all around better, go check out Quince. So go do it right now. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/falloutlore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to quince.com/falloutlore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/falloutlore.
Hello there, old chap. Good to see another of General Atomic's finest, still eager to serve.
All right, so this is the part of the show where we get to thank our patrons because you guys are freaking amazing, and welcome Gamer Whirl, our newest patron to the Patreon. Thank you for signing up. And to all 54 of our patrons, thank you for being here. And we get to thank our SentryBot Southern Rage for being our Tier 5 patron. And you get our Tier 5 patrons and Tier 6 patrons get calls out every week. Pieman had to step down. He reigned as our Tier 6 patron for, I think it was, 6, 7, 8 months. I don't know the actual count, but Pieman, thank you so much for your support for such a long time. Buddy, you've been such a wonderful supporter of the show, and I know that you're starting your own Fallout show coming up very soon on the Robots Radio Rocket Club called the Fallout Roundtable, and that you're working on that. So stay tuned for that because that's going to be a fun show coming up. But if you're interested in helping to support the show, and we've done anything to help you get through your workday, your commute, your workout, or getting through your holiday treats that you still have from Halloween, because we know that you still have those. They're just going to sit in your closet, and not your closet, your pantry. Yeah, don't put your treats in your closet. That's a terrible place to put them. Put them in your pantry. You still have them in a bag because you got way too many of them, and they're still in there. And we're about to have more holiday treats, if you haven't gotten more already, and you're still trying to eat them all. And if you're going to be binging on those holiday treats and you need to listen to a podcast and you're listening to this one, and you want to help us out, then go to patreon.com/falloutlorecast and check out all the different tiers and get the ad-free episodes and maybe even t-shirts, which are beginning to go out, which is awesome. And if you haven't updated your address, and a few of you guys haven't yet, actually almost all of you have updated your addresses, but there's like 2 people who haven't. I sent you notes, so please go update your addresses because I want you to get the cool stuff that you're paying for. And yeah, check your mail because t-shirts are going out. All the cool stuff. So thank you to everybody who helps support the show. I really appreciate it. You guys are the absolute best. All right, let's get on with the rest of the show. Here we go.
If you have any questions about Nuka World, I'd be delighted to answer them.
All right, guys. So, Brad, let's jump to you. We've been starting with Lawrence a bunch. Do you have any other thoughts about what would happen if the Scorched Plague didn't exist that we haven't covered yet?
Well, so I think one thing that we haven't really talked about is what happens to Thomas Eckhart. in the absence of him unleashing the Scorched Plague, and I guess we can stipulate for the purposes of this discussion, the experiments just didn't happen, or it didn't work out the way that they did in the way that the game actually played out. So there is no Scorched Plague for him to unleash.
Right.
I think Lawrence may have mentioned this before. I think that the Enclave stuff probably plays out the same. I think MODUS ends up killing everybody still. But what if he didn't? What if Thomas Eckhart, his dreams and delusions of power came to fruition in that power vacuum without an overwhelmingly strong faction, with Taggarty's Thunder sort of isolated because of their distrust of civilians, right? I mean, you could really see it wouldn't play out exactly the same, but because of that distrust, you could almost see them working out like a nascent version of the Institute, because we know from the discussions in Fallout 4, the Institute tried to work with the people that were in the Commonwealth, but mutual distrust on both sides doomed that, is the way that they explain it. I'm sure that there's deeper dives of the lore than I've read, but basically they tried to work together, didn't work out for whatever reason, and the Institute became evil. And I know there was the show about what if the Institute wasn't evil.
Yeah, right.
But I think that there's the possibility that they become a version of that, a Brotherhood of Steel version of that, where they're like, all right, fine, you guys want to be like that? We're going to go off over here and we're going to get our technology, and you're going to see you're doomed. So if that happens, if the responders end up doing their altruistic thing and just helping people, earnestly and honestly helping people, maybe David Thorpe's cutthroat gang doesn't get into a position of actual power, right? So there's a little bit of a power vacuum. So if Thomas Eckhart doesn't die, if MODUS doesn't kill him, and he is able to sort of emerge into Appalachia, I think we've seen, and this is more real world than Fallout, if you have someone who people believe to be a strong leader, if enough people believe that person to be a strong leader, I think people have a natural instinct in times of crisis to veer to authoritarianism, which would play right into him. So I think he wouldn't have much trouble getting all these people that live in Appalachia, since they haven't been killed by the Scorched, since he wasn't able to unleash them. So you could realistically see, and when we're talking, you're talking about crazy ideas, you could see Appalachia becoming the new seat of power in what used to be the United States, led by Thomas Eckhart and a dynasty formed by him and his heirs or his chosen successors. It could be a family dynasty like the Kims or like the Tsars, or it could be something like the Soviet Union, where it's the next person up becomes the leader.
Like a remnants of America. Like we are the true United States.
Yeah.
We are
and he could even, I think the Free Staters would probably be the ones who would oppose that the most strongly, but you wonder how well would they be able to oppose it?
Well, if they have the full brunt of the technology and the wealth of knowledge that the Enclave has at their disposal, then the Free State's not going to have a whole lot. I mean, they have a whole lot of guts, a whole lot of
they got moxie,
a whole lot of moxie, but
really,
those Assaultrons are gonna
you have
take that
when
out.
They're like the Ghostbusters. Thomas Eckhart and the Enclave, they got the tools and they got the talent, and at the very least, I think you have a regional dynasty, and at most that dynasty expands out, and maybe the Eastern Seaboard, maybe half of the United States, maybe the whole United States. But I don't think that there's much of a limit, given his ambitions of power, his hunger for power is probably a better way to put it, and the technology that he has behind them. The Brotherhood of Steel it's still early days for the Brotherhood of Steel. I don't think Taggarty's Thunder would pose much of a threat to that force at all, and I don't think that Maxon's original Brotherhood of Steel out in California, once they catch wind of what's going on, they would probably want to stop what's going on in Appalachia. But Eckhart may say, "Oh, I heard about these guys over in California. I'm gonna go wipe them out because I can."
Yeah. Can you imagine? Can you imagine a MODUS, a not insane or dangerous MODUS, a MODUS that was no, but let's take that another step. One that was able to be controlled and programmed to coordinate any of the robots that they discovered in search and reconnaissance of other robotic technology, and in search and reconnaissance of any other former United States members of the United States government, military, anybody else that was at least in some way true to the original intent of the United States government, pro-enclave, any of that stuff. And you give that mission 10, 15, 20 years, and you send out all the Assaultrons, all the Mr. Handys, all the technology that you could muster out from West Virginia, which is in the middle of the East Coast. You know, you send them out to Ohio, you send it out to the East Coast states, you send it down to the South, and you have all of that stuff come. And with the job, especially the bots, with the job of finding and reprogramming any other robotics that they find, and basically indoctrinating any technology with the agenda of doing the same thing, and then bringing back all of that technology to the White Springs.
Well, and we see that even with the Bots on Parade event. You know, that exists. So like the ability to do that exists, and we see it on a very small scale. So that's clearly part of what MODUS has the ability to do, and and not just MODUS, but the infrastructure has the capability of doing. So that's something that I think, if not necessarily planned, it's certainly a feature that they had in mind. Right.
And you don't do it from like Neil Patrick Hairless. That's a wonderful name. In chat says it wouldn't work. That level of intelligence power would inevitably turn into Skynet. You don't give it an AI that's smarter than a human. You give it a set of instructions, just like a computer. You give it a simple marching order set of instructions, not the ability to think on its own.
But so here's my feelings about MODUS are MODUS is in a lot of ways, he's HAL 9000. MODUS didn't go crazy because he was fundamentally flawed. MODUS went crazy because he had humans behind him who were doing bad things or things that ran contrary to what his programming can sort of comprehend. So just like HAL 9000 killed Bowman and Poole because he was told to lie, MODUS ended up killing everybody because of the actions of the humans that were around him. So, you know, I think that if a computer is a tool, right? HAL was supposed to be a tool. MODUS is supposed to be a tool, and AI can be an important and powerful tool within that. But what it depends on, and the problem is, you and I, all of us here, have met human beings. Humans always manage to screw it up. You know, if done properly, a tool like that can have almost limitless power. And doing what you're talking about, giving it the marching orders, basically saying, go forth and multiply. Right. Is what you're saying.
Yeah. There. And bring everybody back, and let's make this the seat of power, and create a 10-year plan to now create an army and a headquarters with the technology and manpower that nobody in the country will ever be able to combat, basically.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing that since you're doing it 25 years or 30 years, however many years after the bombs fell, you know, whenever Eckhart's plan goes into effect, you're not doing it in the time of Fallout 4 when there's already all this other, you know, stuff established out there. You're hitting it very, very close to the beginning when society is just barely getting to the point where it's starting to reform.
And everyone's needy. And there are people who remember the United States. There are people who are going, oh, this is the message I've been waiting for. Somebody from the United States government is saying that we're rebuilding, and to head to Appalachia, to head to West Virginia. This is where the new headquarters is. They have jobs, they have work, they have food, they have clean water, they have land.
Well,
Sign me up.
Especially given that we are operating under that sort of 1950s heck yeah, America of, you know, that where that would be, people would be very receptive to that. Yeah. You know, more so than today. Like if that happened today with today's society, people would be like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm going to live with these super mutants and mole miners. So you can stay over there. But with that 1950s era anti-communist, you know, McCarthy hearing sort of society, they'd be like, well, hell yeah, man, let's
Hell yeah.
bring it on.
I'm grabbing my shotgun and my shopping cart, filling it up, and we're going. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, Lawrence? Do you think that this would work?
So I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball because I think you actually have to remove Eckhart from the equation for it to truly come to fruition, only because Eckhart was almost 100% focused on wanting to nuke China.
Mm-hmm. You think his own agenda will get in the way?
But I think that if you remove him, I think that there's still the possibility that MODUS could put I won't say a puppet, but MODUS would actually support someone who would almost have the exact same agenda and maybe actually work it in a more positive way so that you could actually have this, rather than, because Eckhart's, would be very power hungry. You have somebody like, I'm trying to remember the name. Oh, Santiago. So you put Santiago in charge, and there's the, Colonel Santiago comes out of the White Spring with her, U.S. soldiers in U.S. uniforms, backed up by U.S. bots, and articulates that same message. Now, MODUS is all about efficiency, and if he sees that there's somebody that's going to be more efficient, that's where he's going to put his support behind. So I think that all of a sudden now, we as a player could arrive in an Appalachia where there's actually a power struggle between a nascent U.S. government and factions like the Raiders and the Free States, and even the Brotherhood of Steel going like, well, wait a second, Maxon told us that the U.S. government was bad, so we want to fight these guys. So we as a player suddenly have to make a choice. Yeah. Do we support what is functionally the U.S. government, or do we support people who are like, well, no, these are the same people who started the war in the first place. Right. We want our freedom. So, I mean, that's a really cool scenario that you can play out.
That's a huge dilemma for the player because that, like, in Fallout 3, the Enclave is very clearly the bad guy. They kill your father, right? They're set up to be like, these guys say they're America, but they're the bad guys. Come on, right? In this scenario that we've just come up with here, it seems like especially if Eckhart isn't in the equation anymore and MODUS isn't like the crazy, creepy AI underneath everything, this seems like, shouldn't I go with them? Shouldn't I be on that side? But wait, the Brotherhood's supposed to be pretty good. I mean, I like except for, Maxon being kind of a racist in Fallout 4. I mean, the Brotherhood's pretty good, but I mean, the Free States can be pretty good too. The first responders those guys are pretty good too, but these guys say that they're America, but these other groups are against them. Like that creates a real dilemma, especially for the player, especially as an American. You're going, well, it seems like they have the right plan here, but I can totally see how in this scenario, that group could become way too powerful, way too quickly. And in any scenario where one group outgrows the power of every other group, all it takes is one leader with the wrong agenda to misuse all of that power.
Well, so are you guys familiar with the Star Trek episode Patterns of Force?
I don't know them by name, but I have.
Patterns of Force is the Nazi episode. Okay. It's so you had the Federation guy who goes to this planet and he's like, hey, this system of government could actually work if you had somebody who wasn't just the most evil human, one of the most evil human beings in the history of mankind running it, like, the efficiency and all this other stuff. I think that's similar to kind of what we're talking here. If you replace Eckhart with Santiago or somebody else who's, again, not unrepentantly evil, but does the same thing happen where that benevolent leader, that good leader ends up, because humans suck, gets, drugged or whatever happens and they get marginalized somehow. And that other person, because of, and you say absolute power corrupts absolutely. If we're talking about by far the most powerful group and the one that is in prime position to rule the United States, rule what used to be the United States, there's going to be a lot of people out there who have the same sorts of ambitions, not necessarily the nuking China part, but the same power ambitions as Eckhart, and will do everything they can to seize that power from whoever that benevolent leader is. And again, it just comes back to, war never changes, but humans never change either. Humans have an infinite capacity for messing things up. So, and I guess that makes a good video game, and that makes a good story, because if everybody's perfect, if everybody, and this is a terrible thing for me to say, but if everybody lives happily ever after, well, where do you find the drama in that?
Oh, sure. But that's why drama is so interesting, is because that's what real life is like. Mm-hmm. You know, life is not just easy sailing. You know, reality is not easy sailing. Our history is not the stories of just everything going easy and simple. It's like our history is complex and it's tragic. And just when you think things are going to be fine, they're not. Like, this is the way the world actually works.
And you can still get to a positive outcome, you know, whatever.
Yeah. And sometimes when you think things are down and out, things work out.
And part of it too is that I've used this phrase in my story. It's, what does happily ever after look like? You know, the happily ever after for this story with what happens in Appalachia, it may still be a happily ever after, but it doesn't look anything like what you may have envisioned a happily ever after for this society looking like afterwards. So maybe it's not Santiago who rules it, but Santiago gets shoved off to the side by somebody evil, but then some other leader rises up and seizes power from whoever takes over for Santiago, and ends up putting something in place that's better than what would have come before. You know, sort of like I was talking about with, I think that the Romani Shin Brotherhood faction is better positioned for long-term success in Appalachia than Taggarty's Brotherhood faction would have been had they survived. It's kind of a similar thing, where if you asked Maxon at the beginning, said, "Hey, listen, do you want this your Brotherhood faction in Appalachia to get wiped out?" He's going to say, "Well, no, obviously not." But after, you know, if that was the way that things played out, and the Romani Shin faction ends up being a powerful force in the region, well, he's going to be okay with that. So that quote unquote happily ever after wasn't the one he was picturing, but it ended up being better than the one he was picturing, and that kind of thing can happen. I like happy endings. I'm a sucker for those, which I don't know why I play Fallout, but
So Lawrence, we're getting closer to the end of the episode here. Do you have any like crazy like what ifs where this might possibly go?
So the one that we haven't even discussed yet, and actually a personal favorite of mine, is David Thorpe. You know, here was a pre-war executive who took a bunch of vacationing upper-class people and turned them into ruthless raiders. Mm-hmm. And if you look at what he was able to accomplish in just a short number of years, you know, the raiders were everywhere. I mean, they were a legitimate threat. They stole technology from the Brotherhood. They camped out like literally at the doorstep of the responders. So in my mind, I think they're the dark horse as far as becoming the preeminent faction in Appalachia, because David had a brilliant mind. He was incredibly organized, and he could convince people to do whatever he wanted. So I think if we think about a crazy scenario, I actually could potentially see the Raiders becoming the faction, and God forbid they should get access to the silos. I mean, imagine a Raider faction with access to nuclear weapons.
What if a Raider faction organized like a corporation?
Yes. That
it's a little bit on the nose, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually, I think, the existential threat really that we could find ourselves facing is a Raider faction that matures. So imagine David, because he wipes out the Mistress of Mysteries. Maybe he actually gets access to cryptos. You know, so I think that's, you know, maybe you have a White Spring Raider war that goes on, that you have the technology of the White Spring, but they don't have the numbers. You have the Raiders that have the numbers plus the intelligence. Yeah. And, you know, that's a really interesting scenario to get into.
I mean, the smart Raiders basically turns into the mob.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking exactly the same thing. You maybe get a similar power structure to something like The Godfather, where you have these incredibly powerful, you know, say call the five families one raider organization that are incredibly powerful. It wouldn't play out exactly the same way because I think they would be much more overt in their power. Like they would be quote unquote law enforcement. They would be commerce out in the open. They would be much more entrenched in legitimate business than the mafia in the real world was. And they wouldn't operate nearly as much in the shadows like a corporation. They would be sort of really out there and very proud of what they were doing. And
but also again, cutthroat cutthroat.
I mean, cutthroat is the perfect name for that raider faction. But and it's a little on the nose. But I mean, they'd act a lot like a regular corporation in like the real world would. They just wouldn't have to worry about laws.
Yeah,
not because that corporations often do now. But
there's absolutely no oversight. Mm-hmm. There would be none.
They would be the oversight. And again, it would end up being, maybe they're not the only raider faction. Maybe they're the preeminent raider faction, but you get, something like the Crater Raiders, also, some form of that group. And they operate like another mob family. And there's that sort of an organizational structure over it. And I guess if you want to be in power then in Appalachia, you have to be some form of a raider gang.
Man, this starts turning into cyberpunk. This starts turning to like Arasaka and Militech.
Yeah, no, and it's that's actually a really interesting rabbit hole to go down because you would have the Brotherhood of Steel, but raiders, right? They still call themselves the Brotherhood of Steel. They still operate in certain ways, like maybe they're super racist and maybe their imperative specifically is to gather and hoard technology and to record information, but they're still raiders.
Right, but they're not afraid to kill people and just take it from them. Where the Brotherhood will negotiate, and they have a moral compass, and they will, they treat people like people, and they will negotiate, and there are certain lines they will not cross. Whereas the Raiders will just march into town, kill everyone, and take the technology, and they won't even bother with the pleasantries.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It would be like a mirror universe version of the Brotherhood.
Right.
I know 2 Star Trek references in one Fallout episode, but
they all have goatees. Yeah, that would be their uniform wrap.
Oh man. Oh guys, this has been super fun. This has been a really cool conversation. We got to wrap up the show. So here, let's go backwards and we're going to go back through. Brad, thank you for joining me. This has been super fun. Your show is a lot of fun and it's a very cool take on not only a character that people know from Fallout 76, Valdez, but some other new characters and things. And I hope people take a chance and go listen to it. It's still very new. You're on your 3rd episode. How can people get a hold of it and check it out?
Well, Once Upon a Wasteland, a Fallout 76 love story, is available on all popular podcast platforms, as well as probably some unpopular podcast platforms. So however you listen,
all of them.
However you listen, you probably can. I do have a pinned post on the show's Twitter account, which is Once Upon 76 Pod. I also share some show information there, commissioned art, story snippets, all those kinds of things. But the important thing is I do have a pinned post where you can find direct links to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, et cetera, et cetera.
You have some well-known voice talent on the show as well.
I do. I am very proud of the voice cast that we've been able to assemble here. Letitia Lemon plays the lead character, the main character, the audience POV character. Elizabeth Kirby, who is a person who was born in Vault 76 and was trained in spycraft and diplomacy and counterintelligence. She's like a Jane Bond, I think is a good way to describe her.
Badass.
And the other lead character, of course, is Odessa Valdez, Brotherhood of Steel. It's a romance, as you know, it's right in the title, and it is those two coming together, falling in love, negotiating a relationship, and all the outside forces that sort of come in and are trying to prevent that from happening, not directly, but just because it's Appalachia and it's kind of a not a great place to be right now.
But there's still like Fallout stuff in it.
Absolutely.
So it's not just like roses 100%. And butterflies.
Right. Yeah. It's very firmly entrenched in the Fallout 76 setting. It's not just a romance. There's also an overarching mystery that does tie into not only Fallout 76 lore, but also some Fallout 4 lore. Mm-hmm. So it is tied very deeply into the Fallout universe. It's definitely not just a a love story set in West Virginia in the late 21st or the early 22nd century. So I feel like there's something for just about everybody. You know, there's the love story, there is the mystery, there's the sci-fi element, there's all that Fallout lore. It's a great voice cast. Odessa Valdez is played by Vitriol. From Vitriol Plays, another wonderful and accomplished Twitch streamer, and there's a great voice cast, up and down the line.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Well, thank you for joining the show, and then Lawrence, thank you for being here. How can people listen to the Modus Files?
Yeah. So as with Once Upon a Wasteland, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, just about everywhere. But you can but probably the best way is to follow us on Twitter. We're at Modus Files. Very active there. Always talking about what we're doing on the show. Lots of lore around the characters that we've developed. We also have a website, which is modusfiles.com. We've also started uploading our episodes to YouTube. So if you go to Modus Files on YouTube, you can find our episodes there. Not all of them yet. We're still in the process of uploading those. And we did just finish our first season. Also, as a bonus to the community, we did a mini series this past year called The Last Days of Appalachia, which actually talk about it's actually stories based on the last days of each of the factions in Fallout 76. So just like we talked about what would happen if there was no Scorched Plague, this is actually kind of my take or our take on what happened to the responders, like that last couple of days. What did they experience? What did they see? What did they do? And that's the same for all of them. And actually, if you listen to that miniseries, there's a pretty big twist at the end that ties back into the main podcast. No spoilers there. I'm going to ask you guys to go listen to it. But it's great. So like I said, first season is over. Second season is going to start in early 2022. We actually have 4 full seasons planned. And we will answer the question why people don't talk about Appalachia in Fallout 3 and 4.
Oh, so. Interesting. And in chat, Solid Snake says, we have a Discord. Do you have a Discord?
We do. And unfortunately, I am not the one that manages the Discord. But certainly I'll get that information up on our Twitter feed. So like I said, anybody here that's interested, follow us on Twitter. We'll get that information, and certainly also encouraging everybody to get on the Discord, and I will figure out exactly what that is.
Yes.
It's one problem with wearing every single hat is that, sometimes you don't end up knowing everything.
Oh God, I know. I know.
And I will say, and probably as we mentioned it before, so Brad here is actually the voice of Modus. He was one of the first voice actors that I brought into the show. He has been an absolute pleasure to work with, absolutely top rate talent. And it has just been such a wonderful experience. I don't think I could actually do what I do without the support of people like Brad, and especially of Brad. So.
Yeah, there's so much fun crossover in the Fallout community. There's always fun stuff going on. So,
well, I could also mention that the prologue episode that I did, which Tom was a suggestion that you made, and I think it was a really good one. Lawrence provided one of the voices in the prologue and did a fabulous job of that. So, I encourage you to check that out to hear Lawrence, the voice actor, in addition to, after you listen to Lawrence, the producer, writer, and narrator, you can also check him out as purely a voice actor reading words somebody else wrote.
Yeah, you'll hear a lot of recognizable voices when you listen through stuff. So, man, that's a lot of fun. And if this stuff went all really fast and you want to just kind of catch all this stuff, you can always log into the Robots Radio Discord. Each of these shows has its own channel. So don't be afraid to just log in and say, hey, what were the links for these things again? What was the name of this thing again? We're always happy to share stuff with you guys if there's ever anything you need. Or you can go to robotsradio.net. There's stuff on there. So any of the stuff you need, don't be afraid to ask. We're always happy to help you guys out. So again, that's Once Upon a Wasteland and the Modus Files, if you guys want to check out those shows. And all of my shows and all the shows on the network, robotsradio.net. And my stuff, if you want to come check out the live shows, are at twitch.tv/robotsradio. My live video game streams are now on the Robots Radio YouTube channel. And a bunch of the videos that I'm making, I've been doing a bunch of stuff having to do with Starfield lately, and taking a look at all the cool Starfield stuff coming, and it's just going to get more and more interesting as we get closer and closer to release. I've been poking people who seem to be a little bit more in the know than I am, and I don't know a whole lot for sure, but what I do know is that they are hyped for the things that will be released for us to know about. So I'm hyped about that. So I will be sharing anything I learn on the Robots Radio YouTube. So make sure you're following on there and just come out, hang out with me on game streams. I posted a video today about the plan and the future of my YouTube channel and what I'll be doing with it. And I'd love for you guys to be there and be part of the community. I'm going to use that as kind of like a community hub now. So I want you guys to be part of that. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. I will see you guys next week. I think we've got a Patreon episode coming up. I forgot to mention that. That's going to be the last Tuesday of the month. That's on the 28th. That's between two holidays. So that should work out. That's coming up. And I will put up the episode that didn't come out last week as soon as possible. So we'll see you again very, very soon. Thanks for being here, everyone. And stay safe in the wasteland. And if you see a Scorched, to remind him that we just did a What If episode and that he doesn't exist. So tell him to go away. All right. Stay safe in the wasteland, everyone. We'll see you later. To plug into everything else we're doing, check out robotsradio.net. Also, look up the Robots Radio YouTube for videos about Fallout and other things. And check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/robotsradio.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.
All right. That was a lot of fun. Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
That was
Jack.
brilliant. I enjoyed that quite a bit.
Yeah. These What If episodes are a lot of fun.
Yeah, they are fun. And it's, I mean, I'm more of a think on my feet kind of a guy. So it's easier for me to riff off what other people say. So Lawrence's ideas were really, fertile ground to riff off of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got into improv when I was in college and actually got some awards doing improv. I performed every week for 3 years, and it's something I still enjoy. I love just kind of thinking on my feet. I'm like that too.
Did you ever do Tony and Tina's Wedding?
No.
Oh, Tony and Tina's Wedding. It's an improv show. It is fabulous. I when I did it, I played the psychotic ex-boyfriend, Michael Just. Yeah, it's a great show. It's a classic. It's been around forever. And basically what the story is, it's Tony and Tina are a couple who are getting married, and the show is the ceremony and then the reception. And the people who are watching the show are guests at the wedding. So they're there at the ceremony and then they go over to the reception hall and they sit and they have a dinner, like there's an actual dinner. And then there's beats you have to hit. But most of it is improv. The guy who played the role before me was so good. He was wandering around the parking lot before the show. Somebody called the cops on him. Like, he was that good.
That's amazing.
I wasn't that good. And the whole thing is, like, my character is supposed to be hateable, right? So I'm the nutcase ex-boyfriend who's just objectionable in every way.
You're just a terrible one. Yeah.
So I clipped my toenails during the wedding ceremony. I had little airplane bottles of booze that I just kept drinking the whole time. The problem is I have a lot of trouble working heel. I always have. So I'm at a table at the reception with normal people that aren't part of the show, like audience members. And they're like, oh, I think she picked the wrong guy. She's like, come on, what do I have to do here to make you people hate me?
Yeah, so our shows were like more like they weren't as like coordinated like that. We had like an on-campus thing, but the college I went to was close. It was in Lakeland, Florida. I went to Florida Southern College, and two of our alumni, one of our alumni in particular, would come back to the college and ran our improv group every week. But he also worked at SAC Comedy in Orlando, which is one of the big comedy clubs. And this was 20 years ago, but at the time it was one of those big clubs. I think it was started by Wayne Brady.
Oh, wow.
I think he was one of the co-owners in the club. And he worked at SAC. And so he would take the things that he learned from being like a legitimate, like, improv comedy artist and bring it back. And he would teach us kids at the college. Right. And I did this for 3 years running. We'd perform every Monday night. and we would do this thing 2 years in a row. The last 2 years I was there, I won improviser of the year from audience vote from the, at the school. And we would pack, one of the smaller auditoriums at the school every Monday night and do a show. And we would just, we'd pull games out of a hat, basically, kind of like a whose line is it anyway kind of thing. And we would just go with it. And we'd get up and we'd play a game and we'd take offers from the audience and we just go. And
that's awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
That explains a lot, actually.
Does it?
It really does.
Yeah. It was fun because like we would just, and it was a challenge every time. I would just show up and I would just like no agenda, just empty my brain of everything and just like come up with stuff and just and try to make my my other actors better because some of them were really bad.
I thought you were going to say try to make the other actors laugh.
Oh yeah, that too. My favorite jokes.
That's sport.
My favorite jokes were the ones that would take people a moment to process. That's when I knew I had a really good one. Not when people would laugh right away, but when I would like say something and then I'd turn and look at the audience and you'd see everyone's like the gears in their head turn for a second. So you'd be like, yeah, and that's what I told her. And then everyone would go, oh, then I knew I got a good one.
One of the beats in Tony and Tina's is there's at the reception, people are supposed to take the microphone and say something nice to the couple. Right. And this is actually it's one of the beats and it's written in the script. It's one of the few things that are actually that has a line written out. So what I'm supposed to do in that part is I'm supposed to grab the microphone and everybody like gets all hushed because I'm a maniac.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to say, just remember, no matter where you go, there you are. The Buckaroo Banzai line. Uh-huh. So no problem. So we do rehearsals. The rehearsals are fine. Everything goes great. I deliver the line exactly as I'm supposed to. Day of the first show, I grabbed the microphone and I said, just remember, wherever you go, don't think you're the first person who's ever been there. The guy who played the best man almost fell over. The audience just went, oh.
Right. Yeah.
It's delivering a payload like that is something you have to save. And there was another thing is there's a scene in that where it's where I get kicked out. There's a circle of people and they're passing around a bottle of booze and everybody takes a drink from the bottle and passes to the next person. Well, I take a drink from the bottle, pass it to the next person. They take a drink and instead of letting it go, I'm supposed to grab it out of their hand and take another drink. That starts a fight and I get thrown out. Well, I told them, I said, you guys are going to have to actually catch me and throw me out. I'm not going to let you catch me. Uh-huh. Final dress. They got me pretty quickly during the actual show. Final dress, man. I was like Barry Sanders. I was.
You're just so fast.
Now, the guy that played the best man, who was the best man at my wedding, as a matter of, in my actual wedding, he thought he'd be smart and he came around the head table and thought that he was going to cut me off because I had like 5 people behind me and I'm running as fast as I can. He thought he was going to catch me. Well, I come running behind the head table and I juked him and I was wearing sneakers. So I juked him and he said it was the first time he was wearing the tuxedo shoes.
Oh no.
And he just went, his feet flew out from under him. He landed on his back. Well, finally they eventually caught me and I had one person on each arm and I had somebody around my midsection and he came up and he speared me like Ronnie Lott.
Oh God.
Before they carried me out.
Yeah. There was one scene where I legitimately, I thought one of my best friends was I convinced him to do it with me. And there was a moment where I used to play this game with my friends. I played a few games with my friends. One was called Floppy Tom. Where we'd be standing, you like stand in a huddle where everyone's just kind of standing next to each other, like pretty close, and you're all just kind of talking. And then I'd say something like, "Oh no," or I'd say, "Catch me," or usually it was "Oh no" because "Catch Me" was a different game. And then I'd start just like going to fall over, and my friends would go like, and I'd go into the middle of the group, and so they'd stop me from falling, and they'd kind of like try to keep me standing up, but I would just play into it. I would legitimately fall down if they didn't catch me, so that was funny. The other game I would play was Catch Me, and I would only do this to my guy friends. But I would, like, standing next to somebody, I'll just randomly go, catch me. And this was, of course, dumb college kid thing. And I put my arm around them and then jump up into their arms. Right? And they would just have to, like, catch me. And if they didn't catch me, like, I committed to it, and, like, we'd both go down. Right? So these were, like, the kinds of things I would do to my friends. Well, my friend was in playing this thing with us, and I don't remember what the sketch was we were doing, but for some reason, I get really scared, and I yelled, catch me, but I was behind him, and I jumped on his back, and he didn't expect it, and just face planted him into the middle of the floor and the stage. And yeah, it was, then, yeah, he was pretty sore after that.
Oh my God.
But we, like, legitimately face planted him.
I got punched in the mouth during a musical. It was Children of Eden, and in the second act, I played one of Noah's sons, and this other actor, who, by the way, the same actor broke his brother's arm during a different show. Oh, geez. So he's kind of a maniac. Well, there's supposed to be this fight, right? And there's supposed to be, a struggle, and he kind of, shoves me or whatever, and I recoil back, and everything's on a platform. Well, he somehow managed to just crack me. I think it was with the back of his hand, right upside my nose. And instead of, I was supposed to kind of fall off backwards to the left, because if I didn't, I'd fall off the stage. Mm-hmm. But he hit me, and I went up like Mike Tyson hit me with an uppercut. I just went straight up and straight back, and I didn't fall off the stage, but it was close. In the first act, I played Abel, and he played Cain. Mm-hmm. And after that show, I think the reason I have right shoulder problems is because of him, because he took the rock and did it on away from my head, but he drove his elbow into my shoulder every single time he did it. So like my feet were probably go like, doo, doo, like, kicking up every time he did it. Damn it, Jack.
Jack. What are you doing? Man. Well, this has been fun, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for hanging out again. This episode, I think I'll put up as soon as I possibly can. So I'll let you know when I have it all edited and notifications are up, and then you're welcome to share it around.
Awesome.
Yeah, guys. Well, have a wonderful night. Chat, thank you for being here.
Thanks for the invite. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. We'll do it again sometime. All right. See you guys later.
All right.
Bye.